We all know that I love Jenna on my channel. Like, we know, we love Jenna Morassie here. There is a female romance in this with a witch and a demon, and they have really hot sex. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Ren, and on my channel I talk all things writing and reading, and today we are intersecting both of those things, and we are going to be talking about the top 10 books that have impacted me as a writer. We're technically going to talk about like 13, but that's not the point. And just a quick disclaimer, these are not necessarily my favorite books of all time, although some of them are. These are books that have impacted me as a writer. Specifically, if you would like to see a video where I talk about my favorite books of all time, drop a comment below and let me know. This video is inspired by my best friend Annie, who this was a while ago, who posted a video about books. I believe it was also books that impacted them as a writer. It was books that impacted them somehow. So I will have that video in their channel linked down below. Definitely go check Annie out, especially if you're into a lot of booktube content, as that's mostly what they create, and I just love them so much. They are such a sweet and just amazing human being, so definitely go check out their video. Also, I'm gonna warn y'all in advance, I am not giving any blurbs for any of these fucking books because I cannot be bothered. I am so sorry. I will have the storygraph links for all of these in the description, but I just hate summarizing books. I am not a good booktuber, so check the description for the blurbs. But I will tell you why all of the books on this list impacted me, and I will also have trigger warnings in the description box as well, and you can also check the trigger warnings on Storygraph. And before we get into today's topic, please make sure to like this video and hit the big red subscribe button down below and turn on those post notifications. I post videos on Tuesdays, and without further ado, let's get into the video. Number one is actually a group of books, which is why there's more than 10 on this list, and this is political fantasy books. I'm listing them as a group because I don't want to talk about them separately, because it would be the exact same reason for all of these books. So let's go ahead and start off with The Savior Sister by Jenna Morassie. What I really loved is how Layla in this book has no political authority, and how she navigates that and gets in the Senate to somewhat do what she wants, even though she technically doesn't have any political authority, because that is an aspect that I'm looking to write into one of my own books. So this was a really great book for me to read in that regard. I love this book so much, and I would definitely recommend it for anyone looking to study up on some political fantasy. So next we have Queen of Coins and Whispers. I really enjoyed this book, and while I do have a lot of critiques of it, something that I really enjoyed reading was the MC ruling as a queen and kind of all that she had to do as a queen. I really enjoyed that, and mostly what I took away from this is the use of the whispers or the spies in this book. This is not something I see a lot of in political fantasy, and this book in particular impacted me as a writer because it made me realize how effective using spies can be in fantasy, which is why in all of my political fantasy books, spies are a thing, because I just really love the use of spies, and it was done super well in this book, and I would definitely recommend that you check this book out. And if you are not a YA fan, this is definitely one of those books that was aged down for Triad Publishing, so it's basically adult. Like, this MC is at least 20. Like, anyways, that is our rant for another day. Then we have Queer's War / Iron Heart. What I took away from this book was actually pretty similar to The Savior Sister now that I'm thinking about it, which is because in book one, CRIER doesn't really have a lot of political authority. You can tell that she really wants to be involved, but she's just not able to, and the relationship with her father was super interesting to read. I really loved it, and the romance in this book was so good. I forgot to mention it, but Queen of Coin Whispers also has a amazing female romance. Also in this book, one of my favorite tropes is when a character thinks that they know the politics of their realm in and out, and that there's nothing they don't know, and then there's a plot twist because it's something that they didn't know. I loved the plot twist. I think it's in this book. I cannot remember if it's in the first or second book, because sometimes for me with series, books will blend together. I struggle to like remember like what happened in which book, if that makes sense. But there's a certain twist in here in regards to something that Queer doesn't know about her realm and just in general about the society that was super just like jaw-dropping. Oh my fucking god. And the last book I want to mention is one I actually don't own, and that is Of Fire and Stars. This was one of the first queer fantasy books that I ever read, and while it's not without its flaws, I really like to recommend this book to people who are new to political fantasy, because this is one, I think it was the first political fantasy book I read. I could be wrong. And I think it's just a very good introduction, because while the politics are very interesting, I think because it's written for a YA audience, it's definitely something that's very digestible to read. But you are forewarned, I don't recommend book 2. I like to pretend this was a standalone because book 2 fucking sucked. The next book I'm going to be talking about is going to be Prairie of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. I am obsessed with this book. This could technically fall under the category of books I just listed, but I wanted to list it separately just because of how much it's influenced me as a writer. Literally, when I was scripting this video, this is the first book that I was like, okay, it has to be mentioned, because for those of you who don't know, I'm currently working on Kings of Thrones and Lies, which is the first book in my epic fantasy romance series. And I never realized how much I loved epic fantasy until I read this book, and I was like, oh my god, I love this book so much. Y'all have no idea. It influenced me so much that at the time I wasn't even working on Kings of Thrones and Lies, and I like immediately like got back to it because I was like, okay, it has to be epic fantasy now. Holy shit. And now I have so many ideas for different epic fantasy books. Samantha Shannon just made me fall in love with the genre. And one of my favorite things that really impacted me specifically is in regards to dragons. So listen, I realized that especially in neckbeard fantasy, dragons were very overused and very trite, and I didn't think I would enjoy the use of the dragons in this book, and boy was I wrong. I just love the dragons in Prairie because they are so unique and they are so different, and above all, not everyone in every part of the world feels the same about them. I forget specifically, because it's been a while since I read this book, so I forget like what regions of the world love them and hate them, but there's basically one part of the world that worships dragons. They are like gods, and then in the other part of the world they hate dragons, they fear them, they try and kill a dragon when there's a dragon. And I just live for that dichotomy. I love stuff like that where something might be worshipped, whether it's a creature or something else in one part of the world but is hated in another part of the world. I just think that is so interesting, and in general the politics of Prairie were just so interesting to read. I really loved this book, and if you haven't checked out Prairie yet, you definitely should. I would highly recommend it. And the next book I want to talk about is Blood Witch by Naomi Clarke. And I kind of hesitated to mention this at first because objectively it's not the best book in the world. It's not super well written. I wanted to mention it because Blood Witch made me realize an issue that I have with fantasy that I didn't like register in my brain until I read this book, and that is the use of magic. For those of you who might not know, I mean, that's my altar, right there. That's, I literally have an altar in my room. I am a practicing witch, for those of you who might not know. And something that's frustrating in fantasy is the use of magic, because when you practice magic, it's very hard to, I guess, just read fantasy. It's just really frustrating sometimes. It's very difficult for me to explain it. Like when I read books that are set in California, because that's where I live, and California is depicted badly, I kind of have to like separate myself almost and just like think of it as like a separate California. Like, if that makes sense, like I have to like distance myself from it or else I'll become so critical of it. And that's how I feel with a lot of fantasy that involves any sort of magic, which is very common in fantasy, which is honestly why I don't read as much fantasy as I read romance, because lately I've just found myself picking apart magic systems, and it can be really frustrating to read, especially when witches are depicted as evil, because that's just like kind of offensive, you know what I mean? But anyways, this book really made me realize that I wanted more realistic magic systems, and I really loved this book. I loved how realistic magic was in this book. Obviously, there is going to be a sense of unrealisticness to it because it is fantasy, but to date, this is definitely the most realistic magic system I've ever read. And I would highly recommend it if you are looking for something that's more realistic, if you're a witch as well, or if you are interested in seeing what realistic magic could look like in fiction. I would definitely recommend for you to check this book out. And there is a female-female romance in this with a witch and a demon. and they have really hot sex. So I would highly recommend this for both those reasons. Then the next book, I'm just realizing, is the only book so far that I've actually read this year, and that is The Darkness Outside Us. This book was actually the first book I read this year. I really started this year with a bang. I have thought about this book so much this year, and I have found myself just like recommending it so much. So what's funny about this book is during the first 50 pages, I almost DNF'd it, and I know a lot of people have like not finished this book, and I am begging y'all, I hear you, but finish it. I swear it gets better. It gets so much better. Okay. Oh my god. So the reason that this book has impacted me as a writer is because of just what a mind fuck it is. That is how I describe this to every fucking person. It is just a mind fuck. Because the way this book had me questioning my existence, like, okay, this is like, okay, some people said like the black pages are a spoiler. Personally, I don't think it is, but this might be considered a spoiler, so fast forward a bit if you'd like. But am I real? Are you? Okay, the way that I'm like deceased from it, like the way I think about this every day, every fucking day, and the ending, holy fucking shit, it was such a good ending. I love this book so much. I'm not even a sci-fi person, okay? I fucking hate like sci-fi in space specifically, and this is a literally sci-fi book in space, and I love it. I need to read anything this author ever publishes ever again, because the way that I have not been so impacted by a book in so long, the way this book impacted me, holy fucking shit. It is seriously so fucking amazing. And looking back on it, I'm pretty fucking sure this is the only book on this list that I've read this year, because I just... it is so fucking good. It is such a mind fuck, and if I can ever make my readers feel this way, oh my god, that would be incredible. So yeah, in conclusion, read this. Thank you very much. I don't actually have this one, but I wanted to hold up something because I feel weird when I talk about books to hold up something. So I'm gonna hold up another poetry collection by this author that I actually haven't read yet. So the book I'm actually going to be referencing is The Witch Doesn't Burn in this one. This one is Flower Crowns and Fearsome Things. I got this at Target literally just because it had, well, not just because, but mainly because there's a lot of art in it. It says, I want to say the art's exclusive to Target. No, the art might not be, but I know it says it has bonus poems, which is why I bought it initially, because I usually read poetry collections as ebooks just because they're really short, so I don't like spending money on books that are super short. But anyways, so Amanda Lovelace, and honestly basically all of her books are just like on this list in general because I love her. I love her poetry. I'm so obsessed. I read all of her poetry collections in the Women Are Kind of Magic series. They were all so amazing, and her poetry is on this list in particular because she's really the poet that got me into poetry, that made me want to write poetry. And literally, I think right after reading her first book that I read from her, I participated in Escape Roll last year. Also, oh my god, Escape Roll's like low-key coming up. Besties. Anyways, and I'm just so grateful because I'm really into poetry now. I actually write poetry a ton. It helps me fall asleep at night. And I'm just so grateful that I have fallen in love with poetry, and I would just highly recommend for you to check out her books. The Witch Saves Herself in this one is definitely my favorite, but I might be a little biased because that is the first book I read from her. But I do personally think that's the best one, but I think this one might give me a run for my money because I've peeked at a couple of these and they're really good. I just really appreciate her in general because I just feel like she improves so much with each collection she puts out, and I just always really enjoy reading her work. So now I'm going to go ahead and recommend an Adam Silvera book. This is technically Here's to Us, but we're going to pretend like this is What If It's Us because I want to hold up something while I talk. So as you can see, I have started this, haven't finished it. It wasn't exclusively a DNF. This is what I call an unintentional DNF. I do this a lot. What If It's Us? What If It's Us is one of those books that just has stuck with me mostly because I'm pretty sure that it was the first queer book that I ever read. If not the first queer book, either the first explicitly queer book or the first queer book that really spoke to me. And I remember, so my room is rearranged now, so where my bed is right now, I remember I was listening to the audiobook. I actually recently found a picture of it. I will put the picture on the screen so you can see. But I'm literally like on my floor, and I'm not sobbing in this picture, but like right after I took this picture, I listened to the audiobook because I was like continuing to listen to it, and I started sobbing. And this is one of the moments when I realized I wasn't straight. So a very important moment in my life. And I just related to Ben in particular so much. Arthur too. Arthur got on my fucking nerves, but I also related to him a lot. They were both just very relatable, and I just love both of them so much. So much. Also, quick trigger warning for any trans people out there who might want to pick up either of these books. There are Harry Potter references, which is actually why I DNF'd this book somewhat unintentionally. And I'm going to continue reading it, even though I was literally just talking about how I don't want to read any more books that have any Harry Potter or J.K. Rowling references. This is going to be my exception, partly because I already bought it, so I feel like I feel like it's a waste of money if I don't read it. And also, I really want to know what happens in this book, but I'm not happy about the Harry Potter references. And honestly, objectively, What If Success is not the best book, and I can already see a lot of that bleeding into this book already, like page 20. It's just a very special book for me. It's one of those books where there are definitely criticisms of it, but it's impacted me so heavily because when I was on my floor sobbing, a while later what I thought is, as a writer, this is what I want. I want to help someone come to terms with their identity, so much so that they sob on their fucking floor at 2 a.m. because they have never felt so seen and so represented, because that is such a special feeling. And I would just be so honored if I could help another reader feel that way with my work. The next book I'm going to be mentioning, I mentioned in my sapphic romance recommendations video, which is The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics by Olivia Waite. This book is one of my favorite books ever, and the way that impacted me specifically, well, I would say there's 2 ways. The major way would be the sex scenes. Not gonna lie, this was the book that really made me how fucking tired I am of wholesome sapphic romances where there's no sex or it's fade to black. I'm tired of that, okay? What is it with writers not letting sapphic couples bang on page? I don't get it. I don't get why every sapphic romance has to be so wholesome and so sweet. Like, give me some not so wholesome sapphic romances. Give me some kinky ass BDSM sapphic romances. Just give it all to me. Like, this is why in my books you will see so much fucking sapphic smut, and I am not sorry about it, because not enough writers are writing any sapphic smut. I don't think this is really considered smutty, to be fair. There's definitely like detailed sex scenes, and this was the first time I read a sapphic book with detailed sex scenes, and ever since then I get so fucking annoyed when we don't get details from sex scenes with sapphic characters, because it's like, I want the details. Please give me all the fucking details. And the other way this has impacted / influenced me as a writer is because it made me realize I actually really love historical romance. I thought I hated it, and I just realized I was hating it because all the romances I read were fucking straight. But oh my god, give me a queer, like, historical romance and I will eat that shit up. Look at that angel. Oh, you're so cute, sweetie. I love you. So then the next book that I'm going to be mentioning is going to be Her Royal Highness by Rachel Hawkins. Listen, I don't think I even rated this book this highly, so this might be like a surprising mention on this list. But okay, so I read this book a while back. Oh my god, okay. So this book is kind of what, it's not exactly a guilty pleasure, because I don't feel guilty about it, but I do feel like somewhat of a hypocrite because there are a lot of issues with this book. There's a lot of critiques that I have. This book is on this list because it made me realize that I want so much more sapphic romances like this, because how many royal fucking romances do we have with straight people? Too many. That's how many. And how many sapphic ones? This one. And more, I'm sure, but I don't know of them. So comment below if you know of any more besides this. But literally, it made me realize that I just want more, like, shit that's cliche for fucking straight people and straight romances in fiction, and has given me so many ideas for things that has just been done to death with straight books that I would just love to see made queer. Now, I don't think I've talked about this book on this channel, which is honestly a crime. Actual crime. If you are subscribed to my old channel, you are not going to be surprised by this. So the 10th and final book that has impacted me as a writer is The Brilliant Death by Amy Rose Capada. This is one of, if not my favorite books of all time. This actually, I'm pretty sure this is my favorite book ever, which is fucking insane. So this is a YA fantasy, and it follows Tio, who is gender fluid. For those of you who don't know, I somewhat identify as gender fluid. Somewhat because, like, I used to very heavily identify with that label. I don't know if I do anymore. I mostly just call myself non-binary at this point. But I don't know. All to say, I really related to Tio in this book. I love them so much, and Celio, their love interest, is also gender fluid. So first of all, I don't see enough trans characters dating other trans people, and I just want to see more of that in fiction. And this book really just was another one of those books that made me realize how important representation is, and exactly how I want to make my readers feel, but on a much deeper level than What If It's Us or some of the other core books on this list, because this was the first book where I felt like, I know some people have talked about how characters are exactly them and were made for them, and while Tio and I aren't exactly the same, because Tio, I mean, the most obvious thing I can think of is sexuality wise, because I am a lesbian, and I don't know if Tio's considered bisexual or what their sexuality is, but I know that they don't just like women or men. I know that they like multiple genders. I feel like Tio is the closest to like the exact imitation of how I feel in fiction, and it was just such an emotional experience reading this book. This is just such an amazing book. Like, fantasy wise, I think the fantasy is done really well in this book. It's just a really well crafted book, and I wasn't sure if I would like it when I first read it because it's pretty short. It's only like 300 pages, which is fairly short for a fantasy, I feel like. But I truly feel like Amy Rose Capada is one of those authors who just writes so well and who made the most out of every single word. And just the writing style and the prose and the world building and everything in this book is so amazing. And I just really hope that with my books that I will be able to represent someone as well as this author has in their book, because it was, again, such an emotional experience, such an incredible experience feeling so represented in a book. And I have not felt this way since reading this book, to be completely honest with you. And I don't know if I ever will feel this way about a book ever again, because it's just such a specific experience. And just the way that Amy Rose Capada just like depicted it so perfectly genuinely blows my mind. And with that being said, that is all that I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed today's video. And if you did, please give it a big thumbs up and hit that big subscribe button down below and turn on those post notifications so that you know every time that I post a new video. And please let me know in the comments down below what books have impacted you as a writer, a reader, both in general, and let me know if you'd be interested in getting a favorite books of all time video from me. I feel like that could be a lot of fun. I post videos every Tuesday, and you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Ren Keeling. And you can also check out my website at www.renkeeling.com. I'm actually working on overhauling my website and newsletter, so you can expect a new one of those coming to you in the future. And for all my writers out there, stay tuned for next week's video, because I'm going to be breaking down a pretty popular writing structure. I actually, as of filming, have already filmed that video, which is kind of funny. So if anyone has any guesses about which structure I will be covering and any future structures you'd like to hear me cover, definitely let me know in the comments. And if you have any sort of video recommendations / requests for me, definitely let me know in the comments and I will try to make that video happen for you. With that being said, that is all that I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!